Now, before going to start with the machine design, let me tell you which chapter I'm going to deliver for a couple of days. That is chapter 3, Design Against Static Load. Now, what do we mean by static load? Static load means the load which doesn't change its magnitude and direction with respect to time. Okay. Now, in the design against static load, we have to discuss design parts subjected to tension, compression, shear, bending, torsion, combine, and eccentric axial static loads, and combination of all these loads that will give you in quarter joint, knuckle joint, and levers. So these are the topic points which we are going to discuss in this particular chapter. Okay. Now, before going to this, what is machine design? Now, machine design comes from two words. One is machine, another is design. Okay. So when you are going to design for a machine, what is machine? So machine is nothing but an apparatus using mechanical power and having several parts, each with a definite function and together performing a particular task. Okay, suppose we have to manufacture a scooter or design a scooter. So we cannot design a scooter. We have to design various parts which are used in a scooter. So after designing these various parts, we assemble them to perform a particular task. So that is to be called as a machine. So machine design is mainly subjected to the design of machine elements. So whatever books you are going to refer, they are also been called as design of machine elements. Okay. Now each element is a separate part of the machine, and we have to design separately and place in assembly. Okay. So in general, several machine elements are assembled together to form what we call complete machine, and which performs various applications as per the requirement. Okay. So this is the broad idea about the machine design. Now we go to our topic. Now, classification of the machinery. Now, one is a general purpose elements and another is special purpose elements. Now, what is general purpose elements? So, the elements which are common with all kinds of machines, okay, which are used for different applications, they are called as general purpose elements. And say we can have nuts, bolts, keys, axles, shaft, couplings, bearings, etc. So these are the elements which have been used irrespective of the different machines. So they are commonly been used for different machines. Okay, so that is known as a general purpose element. Special purpose elements means they have some specified work in a particular machine. Suppose piston and connecting rods, they have been specialized use for the machine or the engine. Okay, so in compressor, blades are a special purpose element. So other special purpose elements are camshafts, push rods, crankshafts, cylinders, etc. Okay, so these are the elements and mostly we have to design for general purpose elements first, and later on we go for some of the special purpose elements for the designing purposes. Okay. Now remember one thing, machine design is a subject in which, suppose you are 110 students, so 110 different answers may be there, and all of you are correct also. Okay, so don't try to match the answer with each other, because design is such a subject. So you have to design by taking different criteria and designing various parts and assemble them into finding a machine. Okay, now let us start with the our chapter, that is definition of static load. Now, as I told you, static means which doesn't change with respect to time. Okay, so static load is a force gradually applied to a mechanical element and which does not change its magnitude and direction with respect to time. Okay, that is to be called as a static load. And the various elements subjected to static load we are going to design. Okay, so there are mainly two broad classes of materials. What are the different classes of materials? One is a ductile material, another is a brittle material. Now all of you must know how the failure takes place for ductile and how it will take place for the brittle also. So in ductile material, large tensile strain took place before fracture. So that means in a ductile material, if you are applied the load, so the plastic deformation takes place before the fracture. Okay, so it will be elongated much before going to the fracture. In brittle material, very small tensile strain before fracture takes place. So that means if you apply the tensile strain, okay, after some time, suddenly the brittle material fails. Okay, that will break. So these are the two materials which has been very much used for designing the various kinds of machine or the machine elements. Now the modes of failure. Generally, we have three modes of failure. One is failure by elastic deflection. Second is failure by general yielding. And third is failure by the fracture. Okay. Now, first two failures, that is for the ductile material, and the third is for the brittle material. Now, you know, okay, all of you must have learned about the stress strain diagram. Okay, everybody knows it. Now, in a stress strain diagram, if you see, I'll show you in general yielding, but in a stress strain diagram, first straight line is there, that is up to the elastic deflection. Then plastic deformation takes place, and thereof yielding stress and the breakage takes place. Okay. Now, if the material or the element fails before going to the yield point, then it is to be failed under the elastic deflection category. So here, in a failure by elastic deflection, mainly in the application line training shaft, transmission shaft, supporting gears, the maximum force acting on it is limited mainly on elastic deformation or rigidity, not on the ultimate or yield strength. So here, due to the deflection, the material, that is the shaft, fails before it reaches to the yield strength. Okay, So that is the first kind of failure. In the second failure, it is the normal failure, that is by the yielding. Okay, when the yield. So everybody knows about, okay, everybody knows about the stress strain diagram. Okay, up to here, okay, this is the proportional part. This is from here the elastic deformation takes place. This is the yield area. From yield area, it reaches to the ultimate strength, and then the failure takes place. Okay, this is the everybody knows it. Okay, so here ductile materials loses its usefulness due to the large amount of plastic deformation after yield point stress. So after yield point stress, now the plastic deformation takes place. Okay, and that is to be called as general yielding. And localized yield, that is this area, that the region of the stress concentration restricted to a very small portion of the component. So this is the localized yielding, and after yielding, the plastic deformation takes place. Okay. Now the third failure, failure by the fractures. Okay, all of you know the stress strain diagram for the brittle material also. So this is the stress strain diagram for the brittle material. Okay, so here what is to be there? Sudden fracture. So normal it is working like this way, and at one stage suddenly the fracture takes place. That is without any plafond deformation or without giving any information to you whether it is breaking or not. So the breaking is, or the failure is, sudden and total. Okay, so these are the three modes of failure. Now, factor of safety. Now all of you must be knowing the factor of safety. Now, what is factor of safety? Okay, you must have learned about factor of safety. Means anything the extra strength you reserve so that it won't break in the normal condition. Okay, in a broadly we can define factor of safety. So I'll give you one practical example. So in your vehicle, in a scooter, you have a reserve cock. Okay, so what do you mean by reserve cock? So in a normal condition, when you are going there, okay, and your petrol finished, so you again travel for a certain period, okay, by using the reserve petrol. So in a machine, factor of safety, it is to be called as a reserve strength. Okay, so here, while designing, sufficient reserve strength is required to prevent accident by taking suitable factor of safety. Okay, now the definition is, it is failure stress divided by allowable stress. That is to be called as factor of safety. Or you can say, or you can define factor of safety as failure load or divided by working load. Okay, now one which is very important, that allowable stress is used for designing the dimensions of the any element. So remember one thing, always use allowable stress for designing criteria of any component. Okay, and allowable stress, what is allowable stress? It is the stress which will not exceed under normal working condition. Is it clear? Now, do you know how we represent the factor of safety, allowable stress? That is in a rectangular bracket. So anything written in a rectangular bracket, that is to be considered as allowable stress. So designing allowable stress is important for find out the dimensions of the elements. Okay. Now for ductile materials, okay, all of you have learned all these things, but these points are very important while designing any element. To become an engineer, to design something, these points and the concept of your elements of machines, that is MOS or EM, that is engineering mechanics, that you learn in first year, that is the most important subjects. And in this chapter, up to say 25 to 30% of this lecture that based upon engineering mechanics and MOS. Okay, so I'll just browse your knowledge for these, that is EM as well as MOS. Okay, unfortunately I won't ask you the question and you can give me the answer, but whatever is there after say 15 minutes or 20 minutes, okay, we can have a 1 minute or 2 minute session. If you don't understand anything, okay, then I'll repeat it again or I'll proceed for the further points. Clear? Okay. For ductile material, that is stress is equal to SYT divided by factor of setting. What is SYT? That is the yield strength of the material. Okay, so remember one thing, keep it in your mind, for ductile material, you have to use the yield strength. Okay, and for brittle materials, which strength you are going to use it? That is ultimate strength. That is stress is equal to SUT upon Fs. That is SUT is ultimate tensile strength of the material. Okay, so the first point, always take the allowable stress. Second point, for ductile material, always consider the yield strength, and for brittle material, always consider the ultimate strength. Okay, this is the third point. Okay, now let us say the magnitude of factor of safety depends upon various factors. Let us go one by one. One is effect of failure and another is factor of safety. Whether it is low or high, we have to find it out. Okay. So the first is failure is minor or little inconvenience or less time is required to replace. Okay. Then what should be the magnitude of the factor of safety? It is low or high? It must be low. Okay, that is failure of ball bearing in a gearbox. So it is very easy to replace the ball bearing rather than replacing the gearbox and the other items. Okay, so always while designing, factor of safety is one of the major criteria. Okay, so if you take the factor of safety proper, then your design is optimum. Otherwise, what will happen if you take, say, strength purposes, if you take the factor of very high, then there are many subsequences for taking the higher factor of safety. That means if you take the higher factor of safety, then cost is more. In certain cases, your material is more. Okay, manufacturing time is more. So that will create overall, uh, say, many criteria, or you can say as the cost effect of the material or the main machine also. Okay, so that is the first case when the failure is minor. So in another case, so failure is substantial loss, or you can say it is dangerous to the human life. Say failure of a valve in a pressure vessel. So if the valve fails in pressure vessels, what will happen? You cannot control, okay? You cannot control the gas, or you can steam or any other thing. So that will be dangerous to the human life, and that gives the substantial loss. So in that condition, you have to take the factor of safety is high. Okay. Second point, types of load. Now, what are the major criteria or the classification of the load? One is a static load, which we have discussed. Another is a variable load, okay, or the fluctuating load. So whenever we take different types of load, the factor of safety is different as per the load. So if a static load, okay, that means your magnitude and direction of the load is constant. That means it doesn't change with respect to the time. So in that condition, we take the factor of safety as low. In another load, that is a variable load or fluctuating load, or you can say as an impact load. Okay. So in this condition, you have to take the factor of safety is high, because you cannot find exact amount of force or the load which works on the particular machine or the elements. So in that condition, we have to consider the factor of safety is high. Then degree of accuracy in force analysis. So in number of cases, you can find out the forces precisely determined. So forces you can find out easily before designing. Then we can take the factor of safety is low, because we know how much exact forces are acting on a particular element or machine. So in that condition, we are liberal to take the factor of as low. Okay. In another case, if the force magnitude and direction they are uncertain or unpredictable, so in that condition, we have to going towards the safe side. So we have to consider the factor of safety is high. Then fourth, materials of the components. Okay. So homogeneous. Now, what is homogeneous material? That is a ductile material. Okay. And in the homogeneous material, as we discussed, the failure took place due to the yield strength. Okay. So in this condition, we take the factor of low, because we have sufficient time to understand that the component is going to fail, say within a half an hour or 1 hour or 1 day or so on. Okay. So in that case, we have to take the factor of is low. The second one is non-homogeneous. That is nothing but the brittle material. How the failure takes place? By the ultimate strength. Okay. Failure is due to the ultimate strength. So in that condition, we have to consider factor of safety is high. Okay. Then reliability. If you have a low reliability or less reliability equipments, okay, then we have to take the low factor of safety. So if the reliability is high, say in the defense equipment, say continuous process equipment. So in certain factory, the machine is running continuously for 24 hours for number of days. So in that condition, the reliability of the machine should be more or high. Even power stations. So power station, generation of the power or electricity, we can't stop it. It is a 24 hours work. Okay. So in these conditions, the the reliability is very high. So when you take the reliability high, factor of change should be more, that is high. Okay. Then the sixth is cost of the component. So if the dimensions increase, if the cheap machine part is there, okay, or it is very cheap to replace the parts, then factor of safety is low. And when the part is costly, when the dimension is more, material requirement more, and so the cost is also more. So in that condition, the factor of safety is okay. Then the testing of machinery. So when you, in number of cases, you test the elements before it is executed into the machine. Okay. So when the elements are tested under actual condition of service and operation, then we take the factor of safety is low. If testing is not possible, okay, and there is a deviation from actual to the other test conditions, okay, in this condition, we have to take the factor of safety is high. Okay. Then the service condition. So which is the environment? So if the corrosive atmosphere there or the high temperature environment is there of a machine element, always we have to take the higher factor of safety. And if in a normal condition, okay, factor of safety should be low. Okay. Then the quality of manufacturers. If the quality is high, now when your quality is high, okay, so if you are very precise for the manufacturing, you must have learned in metrology also. You know about the star. So 3-star, 2-star, and 1-star. So that will give you the surface finish or the quality of the particular item. Okay. So if you are going to increase the quality, then subsequently dimensions is going to reduce. Okay. So in that case, the factor of safety is high. So in case the poor manufacturing quality is there, okay, is a number of components, it doesn't require the high quality. So in that condition, we take the factor of safety low. Okay. So these are the various modes for using the factor of safety as low or high, depending upon the various condition. Okay. Now, the selection of the magnitude of factor of safety, okay, different components under normal condition. That is, which are the types of materials, what are the modes of failure, and what should be the value of factor of safety. Till now, we have discussed about low or high. Okay. So using those conditions, under those practical parameters only, number of parameters, the value of factor of safety is range will be different. So these are the normal range which is given to factor of safety under normal working condition. Okay. So the first is brittle material. So how the brittle material fails, that is ultimate tensile strength. Okay, this is the third time it comes. Okay, I'll repeat it again. So brittle material, that is the cast iron. It fails in ultimate tensile strength. So the value of factor of safety for brittle material, we generally take 3 to 5. These are the normal conditions. But if the condition changes, we may increase or decrease this value. This is the factor of safety under normal condition. Okay. Ductile materials which fails under static load. Now, which are the ductile materials? That is the mild steel. How the failure takes place of ductile material under static load? Which is that one? Yield strength. Okay, so failure is under yield strength. And the factor of safety is less than naturally cast iron, that is 1.522. Okay, now third case, that is ductile material under variable loading or the fluctuating loads. Now in fluctuating loads, the failure takes place due to the endurance limit. Now design of under fluctuating load, that would comes in machine design 2. Okay, and most probably I'll going to take that also. So in a ductile material under fluctuate loads, failure takes place due to the endurance limit, and the value of factor of C is 1.3 to 1.5. Okay, now the component having contacts. So when two components having direct contact with each other, then that is like cam follower, gears, bearings, etc. So here the Hertzian stress is to be used, Hertzian theory to calculate the contact stress is to be used for calculation or the designing of this particular component. And the value and the failure is due to pitting. Now what is pitting? So when two surfaces having contact with each other, so due to the load which is acting on these components, that will create impact on the surface. And due to the impact, okay, there is uneven surfaces that will be provided on the surface, and that is to be called as a pitting. Okay, pitting is whenever two components they have a direct contact with each other. So that is endurance limit. Okay, and the value of factor of C is 1.8 to 2.5. Okay, then the special components, piston rods, power screws, studs, etc. Okay, they are failed by the buckling load. Now, have you know what is buckling? So buckling is the elastic instability, that is the breakage due to the sudden large deflection. Okay, and the factor of safety is 3 to 6. Okay, so this is about the 5 various types of components and modes of failure. First one is, which is the first one? That is, okay,
Brittle material.
yes, first is brittle material.
Brittle material.
Brittle material, factor of safety is high. Second is ductile under static load. Failure is yield strength, 1.5 to 2. Third is ductile material under fluctuating loads. Failure is due to the endurance limit. Okay, value of factors 1.3 to 1.5. Fourth one is having direct contact, that is calculation by the Hertzian theory, and the failure takes place due to pitting. Value is 1.8 to 2.5. And the fifth one is the special components, that is piston rod, power screw, studs, etc. And they are failed because they are the low components, and due to the load, the sudden deflection or the large deflection takes place, that will cause the buckle. Now the higher factor of safety, in which condition we are going to go for the higher factor of safety? When the magnitude and the nature of external forces is not being precisely calculated. Okay, these are the conditions where we take factor of safety more than normal factor of safety. Okay, so those where in the normal conditions we are going to increase as per the conditions. Okay, so when the magnitude and nature of external forces is not been clearly calculated or precisely calculated, you take the higher factor of safety. Second is non-homogeneous material. Which is a non-homogeneous material? Yeah. So, okay.
Brittle
So
material.
yes, brittle type. Okay. So in that case, we have to take the higher factor of safety. Third is subjected to impact force during running. So during running, normal running condition, if any impact force is applied or it is to be there, we have to consider the higher factor of safety. Then residual stresses. Now what is residual stresses? By manufacturing a component, there are certain stresses which will be there inside the component even though it is to be manufactured, and that is to be called as residual stresses. Suppose we join by the welding, okay, in the other components also. So in that conditions, the residual stresses will always be there. So whenever residual stresses have the possibility of in the component, then we are going to increase the factor of safety. Then working under corrosive atmosphere. As you know, corrosive atmosphere that will corrode or damage the component. So naturally we are going to increase the higher factor of safety in this particular environment. Then subject to the high temperature during operation. In chemical industries, corrosive atmosphere is there, even the high temperature atmosphere will also be there. So in that condition, we have to consider the higher factor of safety. And failure of any component that will be hazardous to the life of the people or property. So in this condition, we have to consider the higher factor of safety. Then in certain cases, we can have the test conditions also before implementing into the operation. So if there is a difference between the actual and the standard test condition, then we have to consider the higher factor of safety. Okay. Then the higher reliability, say aircraft or any components which require the higher reliability. Okay, as you know, we have already discussed this for taking the low or higher the factor of safety. Okay, then abnormal variations in external load. So in normal conditions, it's okay, but external load will change abnormally in certain conditions. Then for that component, we have to consider the higher factor of safety. Then quality of manufacturing is poor. Okay, quality is poor. So naturally, to withstand that particular component to certain life, we have to increase the factor of safety. Then exact mode of failure is unpredictable. Okay, say ductile material, we know the exact mode of failure. Okay, it will go to the elastic period, then going to the plastic phase, and then it will break. So you have sufficient mode for failure of the part. But in number of cases, the exact mode is not possible or unpredictable. In that condition, we have to take the higher factor of safety. And there are another reason, that is the stress concentration in a component. Do you know what is stress concentration? Stress concentration means, suppose in a particular component, okay, if say hole is there, suppose in this component, so hole is provided, okay, so that will lower down the strength of the particular component. So whatever the forces are there, okay, they are concentrated over this period, over this area, and that is to be called as stress concentration. So whenever component have hole, slots, wedges, weak notch, anything is to be there, okay, and it is not a uniform cross section, so then it has the stress concentration, and whenever any component has stress concentration, then we have to increase the factor of safety. Now, what is the disadvantage of higher factor of safety? That is, when you take the higher factor of safety, what will happen? Dimension is increased. That is, higher factor of safety we are taking, so material is more. Okay, so dimension is more, then material will be more, or the volume is more. Subsequently, the cost will rise. Okay, so always we have to take factor of safety as optimum as possible, and only in certain condition, certain atmosphere, we have to increase the factor of safety or take the higher factor of safety. Okay. Okay, stress and relationship. Now, what is stress? That is the internal resisting force per unit area. Okay, that everybody knows. Now, there are generally three types of stresses: tensile, compressive, and shear. Okay, what is tensile stress? When you try to elongate the fiber, okay, due to the external force, that is to be called as tensile stress. And compressive means when you try to shorten the fibers due to the external force, that is to be called as compressive stress. So sigma C or sigma T, that is equal to P by A. This is a generalized equation for tensile as well as the compressive force stress. Sorry. Okay. So sigma T is tensile stress. Unit is Newton per mm square. P is the external force, and A is the cross-sectional area in mm square. Okay, generally we are going to use the units in Newton and mm. Okay, that is SI system. Sigma C is compressive stress in Newton per mm square. Okay, now what is the unit of stress? That is megapascal. So megapascal is how much Newton per meter square? 10 raised to 6, and that is equal to 1 Newton per mm square. Remember this. I know that you remember it, but don't try to forget these values, because in example, values given in megapascal, and you have to convert it into the Newton per mm square or Newton per meter square. Okay, so megapascal is equal to Newton per mm square. So 100 megapascal is given, that is 100 Newton per mm square. Okay. Now this is how we can have the tensile forces. Okay, and in this fiber we have it is pulling up the outward, so that will give you the tensile stress. This is the compressive stress. So here, if we cut this cross section of this component like this, then it will try to compress or shorten the fibers. That will give you the compressive stress. Okay. Now the strain. Strain is deformation per unit length. So that is to be known as small e, that is epsilon. Okay. So epsilon is equal to delta by L. What is delta? It is deformation. What is L? That is the length. Okay. So that is the first equation, where epsilon is strain, because it is a unitless, okay, millimeter by millimeter. Delta is elongation of the tension, that is in mm. How much elongation takes place? That is after the strength and before that, whatever the amount of elongation is there, that is to be the delta. And L is the original length of the rod. Okay, so that will give you the strain. And according to Hooke's law, what is Hooke's law? What is Hooke's law? Stress is directly proportional to strain. Okay, stress is directly proportional proportional to strain. So delta T or C, delta T, if I take is equal to, then what would be the constant? Constant kayo hase?
Yeah,
Capital E.
Young's modulus.
What is E?
Young's
Capital E.
modulus.
Modulus of elasticity. Okay. Modulus of, I know that you know all these things. I just repeat it. Okay. So E is the Young's modulation or the modulus of elasticity. Generally, for ductile and brittle material, the mild steel and cast iron, they are the same. So for cast carbon steel, that is mild steel, it is 2.0 into 10 raised to 5. Okay, that is 207,000 Newton per mm square. Okay, suppose it is not given, you can assume the capital E as 2.07 into 10 raised to 5 Newton per mm square. And for cast iron, it is 1.0 into 10 raised to 5 Newton per mm square. Okay. Now, when we use these two equations, then we can get delta is equal to PL by AE. What is P? Is the force, L is the length, A area, and E is your modulus of elasticity. Okay. For using this section, when we are using this equation, there are certain assumptions is always been there. One is the material is homogeneous, load is gradually applied, that is a static load. Third is line of action passes through the geometrical axis. So, and cross section is uniform and no stress concentration. Okay, so under these conditions, only we are using the Hooke's law. So for using the Hooke's law, number of assumptions we are going to make. And these are the assumptions which we are going to make for using the Hooke's law. Shear stress. Okay, now whenever we are taking the forces, they are perpendicular to the axis. Okay, perpendicular to the. So here in shear stress, external force tends to slide the adjacent places. Okay, when you are laying like this way. Okay, so two surfaces will slide over with respect to each other. Then the stress which is to be there, that is to be called as shear stress. Suppose these are the two plates which is to be joined by the rivet. Okay, and these are the force which is to be applied. So what will happen? It will create the impact here. So it will force like on this side, and this will force on this side. So it will move like this way, move like this way, and breakage will take place. And the breakage will take place due to the stress, which is to be called as shear stress. Is it clear? That is tau is equal to P by A. Tau is a shear stress. It is Newton per mm square or megapascal. A is a cross-sectional area of the rivet. Okay, shear strain. Just a minute. Okay, up to here. This is the last slide. Okay. Shear strain. There is change in the right angle of the shear element, that is to be called as shear strain. Tau is equal to G into Y. That means similar to the stress. Stress is proportional to the strain. So shear stress is proportional to the shear strain. And the constant is to be considered as G. And that is to be known as modulus of rigidity. Okay. So gamma is equal to shear strain. G is the shear modulus or modulus of rigidity. For carbon steel, G is equal to 80,000 Newton per mm square. And for grey cast iron, it is 40,000 Newton per mm square. These are the general way, so that you can have the differentiate, which is having the higher modulus of rigidity and which is having the less higher modulus of rigidity. Now, shear stress and strain have three points which is to be there, which is very important. That is modulus of elasticity, modulus of rigidity, and Poisson's ratio. What is modulus of elasticity? Capital E. What is modulus of rigidity? That is G. And Poisson ratio is mu. So the relation between the modulus of elasticity, modulus of rigidity, and Poisson ratio is E is equal to 2 into G 1 plus mu. Okay, this you can use in number of cases. And remember one thing, when you appear for any test, whether it is for gate, whether it is for the placement, okay, these are the points which are very important. They will ask these concepts in this particular area. So remember this, and that is why I repeated all these things. Where mu is a Poisson ratio, and what is Poisson ratio? It's a lateral strain by the linear strain. Okay, and for carbon steel, mu is equal to 0.29, and for grey cast iron, mu is equal to 0.21.